Hey everybody, it's Red Panda Gamer here for a very exciting video. I'm actually here today to talk to you about a brand new game release, or a kind of an old release, I guess. No, it's not Cuphead or Ruiner, though I am playing those games. They're incredible. I wanted to talk today about a bunch of new games that were released all at once. I don't know why I'm being so coy about it, but the Super Nintendo Classic Edition was released today. Ooh. Ah. Yeah, they announced it. I got lucky and saw Wario64 on Twitter say, hey, pre-orders are up at Best Buy. I'm like, hell yeah. It's $80, I believe. I was lucky enough to also get the NES Classic Edition, which was apparently way harder to get. I'm actually lucky enough to where my girlfriend, Alicia, she kind of staked out a Target for 2 weeks straight to get me one of these for my birthday, and I love it. Though I grew up with the Super Nintendo. I love these things. I think Nintendo does an incredible job with these retro consoles. I hope they do more. I hope they made enough of these, and I know they're making more of this one, the NES Classic, and I know they want to try to keep a steady supply of the Super Nintendo Classic. People definitely deserve to own these if they want to buy them. I really don't see any excuse to where you shouldn't be able to get one if you want one. They seem really basic. I don't really understand. I mean, it clearly worked for them, because I feel like a lot of people just bought the Super Nintendo Classic just out of spite of Nintendo. It's like, ha, I got one. You can't keep this away from me, Reggie. And then he's like, dude, we're gonna put out a ton of them. And that other one that you missed out on, you can get that one too. But enough of talking about the past. Let's talk about, I guess, well, no matter what, this video is talking about the past, so there's really no way around it. This isn't really a review so much as it is like a overall discussion of the product, what I think of it, which I guess is pretty much what a review is anyway. So what I have here, we'll talk first about like the plastic itself, because I think that's what makes this thing so interesting. This is the original NES Classic. I love the look of this thing, despite the NES being such a clunky looking machine. I actually really want like the Super, or the Famicom release of this. It was a nice device, and it looks really nice on your desk. Or like I have it on my second monitor, which also has HDMI. Sometimes I'll switch it over and like, oh, I'll play a little bit of Mario or whatever. The one big problem, or small problem, that people mentioned, obviously, was the length of the cable. It is just atrocious. I cannot believe they did this, and I feel like the whole idea was, like, they definitely spun it well. They're like, oh, well, it's like when you were a kid and you sat too close to the TV. No, this is terrible. Again, for the situation I have it in, where it's plugged into my TV on my desk, I'm already sitting there anyway, but like if I want to sit on the couch, it is an incredible pain in the butt. You just have wires everywhere, when in reality you just need one wire. And I mean, they made wireless controllers, but that just seems like too much. So I really like this piece of machinery, this piece of plastic. I swear, if I see comments about Raspberry Pis, I'm gonna block that person, because I hate that people are like, well, you can just build your own or buy a case and put a Raspberry. That's not, like, to me, that's not the point. Like, this box is the point, you know? This poster that they include with it, you know, is the point. It's the whole idea that Nintendo goes so hard into the marketing and development, like, it just, there is something to this, and I feel like you get the same thing with like people who collect games, like classic games. They're like, well, why don't you just emulate it? Well, I don't want to emulate it. I want to own an official, you know, it's capitalism at its finest, where companies trick you into thinking you love these things. I mean, you do love these things, but that's a whole rant that I don't need to get into. But anyway, the NES Classic is great. I had 30, 20, 10 really great games on it. And, you know, 30 was a lot of games, and it's almost a little overwhelming. You don't really know where to start sometimes. But I don't really have the reverence for the NES the same way I do the Super NES. The Super Nintendo. I'm curious, what did you guys call it? Did you call it the Super NES, Super Nintendo, the SNES, the SNES? I don't know. I've never heard that one, but I guess it's possible someone could have called it that. But yeah, I'm curious to know. I've always called it the SNES or the Super Nintendo. But anyway, this is it. This is the Super Nintendo Classic. Wow. Amazing. I mean, it really is, like, I like it a lot. Again, American release, or I guess North American release of consoles, this thing doesn't look great. The purple and gray box I still think isn't a super great design. There's a little light though that lights up when you turn it on and off. There's also a little reset button that still hitches. Like, it pretty much is a small functional Super Nintendo, which is amazing. The one thing I will say, and I'm sure a lot of people have already said it and will continue to say it until Nintendo fixes it or puts out ones where they don't do it, where the controllers go. I mean, there's the controller ports here, and you know, these controllers, again, they have like the Wii hookup that like plugs into the Wii remote. Obviously that doesn't work, and instead of either, I get that they wanted to like stay true to the original, but they didn't do that for the NES, so I don't know why they want to do it for this, but like they wanted like the iconic, oh, like the controller port. So to access the actual controller port, there's like these two little hinges, which I didn't even notice at first, that you have to like pull up on and pull out, and it just, I hate the look of it. Like, this is such a nice device. I don't know why they went with this route. It's like this weird rubbery piece now, and I don't like it. Like, part of me almost wants to just take it off completely, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like then it'll just look bad. And then the controller just plugs right in there. Luckily, the controllers are longer, and it comes with two of them, which justifies the increased price to me. I think it was $10 to buy a second controller for the NES Classic, which was also like $20 cheaper, though I think the quality of games in the Super Nintendo Classic are like about, I mean, it's makes sense, right? It's Super Nintendo over the Nintendo, but at the same time, I feel like the depth of the library is much stronger. I mean, like, two of these games, Final Fantasy III and Secret of Mana, those are just the ones that caught my eye, are probably better than all of the games on the NES. Or at least, like, you could probably play through Final Fantasy III, like, in completion, and it would take you just as long to do that as it would to play all of the games, like, if you played well. Anyway, so the controller on this one, it's a little better. I believe it's 5 feet, the other one's 3 feet. I mean, I'm over 6 foot tall, so I guess this is a way to do it. Yeah, that's to my head on almost, actually, it's almost, no, yeah, it's about 5 feet. I mean, I'm sure it's exactly 5 feet, which I think is acceptable. It's still not great, but I do think that it's, like, at some point, like, there is research done of, like, well, how far are people sitting from their TV? And again, my setup with the monitor right next to me, it's totally not a big deal if it was 2 feet, though, God, that would be awful. But yeah, there are two controllers, and these are, I hate playing with the original NES controller. I think it's not great. You know, it's sharp edges, it's just uncomfortable to hold and play with for long periods of time. The Super Nintendo controller was great. It introduced top buttons, left and right buttons. It introduced, you know, 4 buttons on the side, this nice memorable pattern. It's a great controller. The matte finish feels a little weird, but that might just be because it's a brand new controller. So my original Super Nintendo controllers are the ones I had from when I was a kid. Like, they are 20 years old, or however old the console is. And they feel awful. They're bad. They feel like they could snap at any minute. These feel nice and solid. Buttons are great. It doesn't feel like a cheap knockoff, but it does still feel weird that it's so fresh and clean. I somehow managed to almost make this video without even talking about the games or how the games perform on the system. They look amazing. Obviously, the 16-bit era has aged incredibly well. I think 16-bit games, at least when they're done really well, are still some of the best looking games out there, especially the games that are included on this. I also love, I didn't know it did this until I started recording this bit, that it runs through like, you know, demos of each of them, which is nice. Like, I just have no controller plugged in. It's just kind of a nice thing you can have off to the side, like this nice little, not interactive art necessarily, but, you know, video game art. It's a nice looking thing. But yeah, the games look great. They run great, full 60 frames per second. The one game I was like the most impressed by was Donkey Kong Country, because I feel like that's a game where a lot of people are like, oh, it hasn't aged very well, the art style looks kind of poopy now, but like, I don't know, it looks so crisp in the HDMI, it just looks so nice and it runs so smoothly. The controller, again, feels great, no problems with that, even though while playing Donkey Kong Country I felt like I was gonna break it in half, more from my own frustration, less from the quality of the controller. There are like CRT options, you know, to make it look more retro. I've never been a fan of that stuff, and I've never met a person that likes it. If you're someone that likes it, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I'm really impressed by it. There are suspend points similar to the NES Classic, where when you hit the only way you can get back to the menu is by hitting the reset. I don't love the hitting reset button to get back to the menu. It just feels weird. But when you're from the main menu, when you go back, you can save that point so that you can load it up at any time, kind of like a save state. They also added a new feature where from that save state you can rewind to like cheat the game. It's still cool that they're adding new features to these older games, even if the rewind isn't super perfect. But yeah, the games run incredibly well. It is a HDMI box that has a bunch of games on it. Star Fox 2, I played a little bit of it, and I've never been a big fan of the original Star Fox, and Star Fox 2 does seem like a lot more of it, though it is amazing that they managed to finish the game and throw it onto this thing. As like, they didn't need to do it. This thing already is packing major heat, but the fact that they did really does just make it that much better of a product. I'm gonna play some more of the games, kind of to make sure like nothing weird is going on, but yeah, as of right now, I am 100% sold by this thing. I mean, I was already sold by it because I literally bought it, but it's great. I'm impressed by Nintendo's tenacity to re-release the same game over and over and over and over, and somehow manage to do it in a way that I am still interested in playing it. I will undoubtedly buy a lot of these games again on the Switch when they're released, because then I can play them on the go. They totally got me hooked, and I'm glad Nintendo isn't a smarter company, or maybe they are, because I feel like they could so easily take all of everybody's money. I hope they do an N64 classic. I really hope they do, actually, because I've been playing Super Mario 64 again, and the game is so incredible, and it would be nice to have a more convenient way to play it with that original controller. I know not a lot of people like the N64 controller, but those games were designed for that controller, and playing it on a Wii U or a Switch or anything feels really awkward. And I don't know what I would want on that. Maybe I'll do a video eventually. I mean, I'm sure people have already done their dream N64 classic. But yeah, I kind of also want to do a video ranking the different games on this thing as my favorites, not the best, because like the best, Super Mario World or Zelda. My favorite, Super Mario RPG or Earthbound. I think I could make an argument that Super Mario RPG is like one of the best games on the Super Nintendo, at least top 15 or however many games are on it. But still, yeah, I really like this thing. I highly recommend it if you can get it. I mean, if you like 2 or 3 of the games on this thing, it's worth it, in my opinion. Even if you just like video games and you want a cool little thing to like put out on display, I think this is a good way to do it. Like, having old consoles out, like especially the Super Nintendo, like old Super Nintendos are so disgusting. They look so dirty from like the plastic they use being exposed to sunlight. I am so happy to have like these nice, minimal looking systems that look presentable on a shelf. They don't look cluttery and messy, and I recommend them. I don't really have much more to say other than that. Great games, great system, like great job Nintendo. Like, I hope everybody gets a chance to pick one of these up. If you have any questions or comments, obviously leave them down below. Happy to hear them. And subscribe to the channel for more videos. I don't know if I'm ever going to do something like this specifically again, but I mean, why not? It doesn't cost me anything but my time to put videos on the internet. And I guess that's what I'm signing off on. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.